morning. Okay, I've got audio. Good morning. It is Friday. Turn the music down. It's distracting me. It's Friday. Got some cool stuff done in the last couple days. So where we left off on Wednesday, I was stuck in some thinking. I'm trying to think if one of the things that came up was what to do about auto-responding. So like, hey, how do we make it nicer so that people don't have to write ping handlers and they don't have to, eventually, when we want to do things like network discovery. Hey, Rob, good morning. We want to, basically, how can I provide functionality and services out of the box that you might want for your embedded or non-embedded systems? I put some thought into like callback style handlers. They could work out, but it'd be a pain. Thought about some different ideas, but basically I was like, well, how about we just lean into what we already kind of do, which is just kind of do everything in user space. So that means providing like an async function that you can call and you can spawn in your service or whatever and go for it. And I also kind of was chafing at so a long time ago I had split up Ergot and Ergot base. Ergot base doesn't know anything about, like, at the time I was using Postcard RPC. Now I'm using Postcard RPC styled kind of stuff. And it was just like the raw protocol stuff. But basically having things in two crates was just like a lot of glue code that was annoying. Like it had some value, but not immediately. Like, I could see maybe someone's like, hey, I love your routing model, but I don't want to use Serday, or I don't want to use Postcard, or I don't want to use whatever. And at some point, if that becomes interesting, we could probably split it up again. But right now, I'm doing this, and I'd like to make it useful. So I'm gonna roll with it. So that led to a couple of things that I did since Wednesday. One was, well, let's see. This might have been already done by the time, but Firecracks did give us a PR for getting to format on some things. Love to see that. First one was introducing services. So we're just going to look at some PRs, but basically I made this like very silly little services object, which really just holds a netstack handle. And this allows me to have functions on it that just do stuff. And I realized this was kind of useful because the netstack struct was getting full of lots of things. Like, it had dozens of methods, and if I kept going, it would have hundreds of methods, which is fine, but it's not super wieldy. And it's a little confusing. So one of the things I started doing was breaking up the netstack file into a module and breaking it into parts. And then introducing the services kind of proxy object is what I'm calling it. But it lets you do things like, instead of copying and pasting this ping server code in all of the examples, you can see all the places that I did it. I should probably make this font a little bit bigger. I should always just assume that I need the font to be bigger, because I'm sitting in front of a monitor and other people might not be. Basically, I can just have them call a function. So you call .services, which gives you the item that has all the services methods. All the services methods on it. And then I can just call a ping handler function and say, okay, you're gonna have a socket with a queue depth of 4, and it works. And it's just basically the code that was copied and pasted everywhere, but it lives in one place now. So you can see in all the places I just replaced it. Originally I had a different like function that did this, but it required you to name some generics. But by using this proxy object, because you call netstack.services, the services object can just have that type, which is nice. So like when you call .services, it just has the type of the current netstack, which works really well. This also lets me split things up for arc netstack and regular netstack, which I can use when you have a non-arc net stack, it just uses a reference, and most of the time stacks are static So static references are what we use as a handle. When you have an ArcNet stack, it uses an arc. And so whenever you get it, you just clone it. And so it works fairly well. And it means that you only need one generic, and a lot of times instead of at least two, maybe more in the future. So that one got merged. I think actually I opened services first. That's why it's older in the list. But I think actually the first one that I merged was back to a single Ergot crate, which made the change. 1 second. Important wife text. She's going grocery shopping, so she gets first dibs. Sorry. But yeah, so this goes back to the single Ergot crate. This touches a lot, but you can see it at least gets rid of a lot. I think a lot of this is probably just the lock file of the second crate. A lot of my crate count, like line counts, are lock files because I have a lot, like in the demos, a lot of those workspaces have their own lock files. But yeah. Yeah, the name of this branch is Crush because I was crushing the two repos together. So there's maybe some interesting stuff in here. Not a lot. It's really just smashing two crates into one and removing kind of some awkward stuff. But yeah, works fairly well. What else did I do? Yeah, I missed some docs in the first one. And this one is kind of like the first, well, it's the second step. I did the same thing for endpoints and topics. So we had services that have stuff that are handled automatically. Endpoints and topics are also useful because I can wrap functionality in here. So all the stuff like spawn an endpoint server. I introduced this concept of an endpoint client, which isn't really like a session full client. I'm worried that this might be a little misleading, but we'll see. And because I noticed that there were a bunch of examples where you were just making the same request over and over, or like with slightly different data. And so you could kind of bundle a lot of that data into one place. So for example, here we used to call like recresp, which is a confusing method name that I think it makes sense to me because you make a request and then you get a response, but it doesn't like make sense with any other library. And so what you can do is you can have a client. And so you go stack endpoints client, and then you give it the type of the endpoint, the address or the destination, and then if the endpoint has a name, this case it does. So then we can just have client that remembers that, and then instead of giving that information on every single call in a loop, we can just say client.request, and we just give it the data of the request, and it will send it to this address with this name. It makes, it's a little thing. It's not a ton simpler, but it's pleasant looking. It is pleasing. I don't know, it's like not magical and revolutionary, but it's just pleasing. Alexandra, I had noticed you put up a pull request. I'm gonna look at that in a second. I'm very excited about that. So yeah, I just do that in a bunch of places. And yeah, this lets me shorten the names a little bit. I like them a little bit better. I think they're neat. So I was excited about this. Let's look at, I need to merge this because I realized I think I missed some stuff. I think it was one of those things where I had this, like I made the change, but I didn't hit save in my editor. So when I went to go to commit, it wasn't there, but I don't know why I'm reviewing this. I'm just going to merge this. Squash and merge. Delete branch. Okay. And then Alexandra put up a PR that puts the logging stuff. I dig that. So this, under the Tokyo Stood feature, I'm going to make this just a little smaller. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to do inline. Sometimes I like unified and sometimes I like split. But this means that I can make the page a little wider and it's not so big of a deal. So the log handler, generic log handler. I'm gonna merge this. Alexander, I'll fix this because on the heap you have this const d usize, but then you use a heap bounded receiver. So like the D is just so like if you wanted to make a stack allocated one, but I'm gonna merge it and then we'll get it fixed. But I'm pumped. I think this is a good idea, and this updates the example for it. But don't worry, I know you're on vacation, so I'll just get this merged and then I'll come and tweak it. It'll get fixed before the release. But hell yeah, I'm excited for this. I'd love to have more services like this. Basically, anything that I do in examples, a lot of the times should just be services. No, you're good. You're good. I'm glad that we have this. This looks very, very cool. I would rather merge first and fix later, because hell yeah. No conflicts. Hell yeah. Off we go. Cool. So now we got that. I don't think we have any new issues, but I did see, I think Alexandra also opened so crazy thought time. Annoyance of topics, since they need to propagate to everyone in the network, and if the network is circular in some way, they need a TTL so they don't end up sending the topic message round and round forever. However, picking a TTL is hard because we want to strike a balance between messages spinning in circles for too long and clients never getting the message. Hypothetically, you can learn the depth of the network via an algorithm that works sort of like, what's your address, tell whatever. Yeah, you could do depth probes. That would be very cool. Yeah, I definitely think this is one of those things where, so I mean, right now, Ergot is at least smart enough. I think I have a discussion or something that says like steal a good diagram. Let me go find it because I have good diagrams somewhere where I can explain this. Where's my diagram? Nice diagrams. Where is this? Okay. No, this isn't even the diagram that I want. Where are those diagrams that I want? I know the diagrams that I want. Book. Feature overview. Okay. I mean, we can use this. This is exactly what I was thinking. So broadcast is smart enough that, so I don't really have any bus stuff like this, but when I do, hopefully the goal will be that devices are smart enough that you actually only send one packet out here and all the other three hear it if it's like a truly broadcast network. If it is point to point, then trying to think how well, because if this is point to point, then these would be individual interfaces. It would be more like this. So the way broadcast works is when you send, you actually, like at every hop, you change the destination to your sending partner. So like if this device was sending broadcast, when it left out of the interface here, it would go, well, I know I'm talking to this person, so I'm going to set the destination here. It always keeps the same source, but it sets the destination here. So it comes in, and then when this one processes that, it goes through the list, and it's smart enough to not send it back the same interface that it just came from. So it'll then come in here, get processed, get delivered anywhere here if someone wants that broadcast. Then it'll send it out here and here. And then because these nodes, because they only have the one that it came in on, they go, okay, I don't have anywhere else to send this. But you're right that if there was some kind of like, if there was a loop here, like if these two were connected, which is allowed, but basically I'm going to tell everyone that like Ergot has no like loop detection or anything right now. Yeah, it would totally, this is why we need the TTL, exactly like you said, is that we would go, oh, it came in here. Where can it go? It can go out here. Excellent. And then it goes, excellent. It came in here. Where can it go? It can go out here. And it would go loop, 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 loop. And everyone would get the same broadcast message multiple times. This is part of the reason why we have a TTL and also why we have sequence numbers. If you had something that really didn't want to get duplicate messages like that, you could check sequence numbers, or, you know, in the future, maybe we will have something that checks sequence numbers. You can have them now, but, yeah, it doesn't tell you a lot. Where was I going with this? Yes, gauging the depth would be cool. I think it would be useful having something where this kind of goes back to that handlers thing, but like something where, yeah, circle go burr. Having something that informs you the depth of the network, I think would be cool. Yeah, if you want to experiment with that, hell yeah. One of the things that so what do I plan to do today? It's Friday. I think we're gonna try and get socket discovery working, which generally includes I'm gonna set up a service that's like listening for, hey, tell me about yourself messages. I think I have an issue for this. Is the name server ? Yeah. I don't know if these are exactly what I'll actually do here. But basically have a couple of interrogation types. This is my avionics brain. I call these interrogations because that's what transponder interrogations are called for TCAS. So you would send out an interrogation that's like, hey, if you're here, tell me. And then everyone will send a ping back. So it's kind of like a radar ping out, and then you might get a flood of messages back. So I might have like, hey, if you're a device, tell me. And that could be one of those things that the service takes is like a name and a serial number, and so it'll respond to those. So maybe I'll have like a config struct or something for this. I don't know if I'll be able to do a socket all call where I'd be like, tell me about all of your sockets, but I might be able to have an interrogation that's like, who has this kind of socket? So like one thing you could ask is like, who has a ping socket? And anyone with a ping socket will respond back. And this will probably require me adding an interface for the net stack that's like gives you an iterator over sockets. Ooh, excuse me, that was probably gross. It might be in a closure or something, so you might need to set like a maximum number you can have, or you could try sending a message for each socket. I don't know. We'll figure that out. I'm going to do something that might not be wonderful, but it'll work. Or you pass in a slice or something like that, and it'll fill it in. Yeah, I don't know. We'll figure it out. I'll do something. And yeah, I think that's enough to get some information. Another thing I might do is, well, let me not get ahead of myself. I'm going to try and get that stuff done. What I might also try, if that goes well, is introducing something into the socket header that lets you have... So now that I've smashed together Ergot base and Ergot, there is only postcard RPC or postcard style communication, so I can assume that things have schemas. So one of the things that I might do is have each socket has like a slice of schemas that it can send, or that it, for sockets that it has open, that it can receive. So for an endpoint, that might have two schemas. It might have the incoming and the outgoing. For topics receiving, it might just have the incoming. And then maybe I might have a separate list of like non-sockets. So if you're like, hey, I definitely am going to send this kind of message, you could register that almost like a socket that can't receive, just so that you can have the schema stuff in there, which I think would be interesting. Because that way, that kind of fills in the gap of service discovery. It still requires the user to like register all of the stuff that they're willing to say, like, hey, I send these kinds of messages. So like my accelerometer in my the tilt demo, you'd have to like explicitly say, hey, I'm gonna send tilt messages. If we wanted to be really pedantic, we could have refused to send messages that you don't have like a registered schema for, but that might be, I don't know if I like that. It might be a good pedantic lint kind of thing, though. But yeah, I think I might try and do that stuff, because that stuff sounds exciting to me, and this is probably like the biggest chunk of code that I've done that hasn't been docs since we've started this, and it's been good, and I was worried that it'd just be kind of like moving stuff around, but just moving stuff around at least was inspiring, because it seems to unblock some excitement in my brain, whereas before I was like, I don't know how stuff is going to go, and so by just kind of shuffling stuff around by merging Ergot and Ergot base, it does seem to have helped, at least, the mental unblock. But I think that's what I'm going to work on. We got a couple of people in chat. If you have any questions, now's an excellent time. Otherwise, I'm going to wrap up and enjoy the rest of my coffee. And then I'm going to try and get some cool services written. The other thing that I need to do, that I know that I'm going to need to do, is write some just tests of like, hey, this is what an endpoint request looks like. This is what a response looks like. Do we send NACs in this case? Should we send NACs in this case? And just getting, like, the compiler would call them UI tests. This would be like protocol tests, I guess. But it'd be good to just start exhaustively writing down what we do and using that in lieu of like a standards doc right now of just like the sum of the tests at least are a good description of what we do, and that can change, but it at least is a good description of that. Luckily, with all of the stuff, like we have stood TCP or TCP Tokyo impls, which means we can just write scenarios like this and run them, and even do things like if we wanted to fully capture the packets into like snapshots and stuff, we could do that. That might get a little fragile, but it's an option. At least we can go and say like, hey, this behavior should work. And then even run some of those tests in Miri would be cool. So yeah, I think it's about that time. So if anyone is interested in helping with that, I'll probably set up a couple of the first ones. But I would love if someone was inspired and wrote some tests, especially if you're like, does it work like this or like this? And I'm like, just go write a test and tell me. And if you don't like what the test says, let me know and we can change the protocol. But yeah, I don't see any questions. So I think that's probably how it's going to go. It's Friday. Fridays are for fun. I'll probably write some scenarios, or what, not scenario, like services for the discovery type stuff. And then maybe on Monday I'll write some tests, because that'll be a good way to come back into the week. But I will be streaming again in the evening around 8 p.m. CEST. But yeah, we'll wrap up the week then. If anyone has any thoughts, let me know. Otherwise, thanks all for watching. Thanks all for opening PRs and discussions and stuff like that. Thanks to Alexandra for a cool PR today. I'm excited for that. All right. Nice stream to watch while drinking coffee. Hey, Lucas. Yeah, exactly. I've got my cold brew. In summer mode, I'm all cold brew. Because it's just too damn hot for hot coffee in the summer, and cold brew's awesome. Being able to have like a 1-liter bottle of cold brew concentrate is awesome, because you can just dose caffeine as you'd like, and it's cheaper than a soda. But yeah, excellent. I hope everyone has a good, if I don't see you in the evening stream, I hope you have a good weekend. Otherwise, thanks for hanging out. I'll see y'all in a bit.